Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. December 30th has the new moon in the sign of Capricorn, and that hits exactly at 5:27 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll need to adjust if you don't live in the Eastern Time Zone, but I need to state a time zone, so that's the one I work with. The thing to keep in mind about this particular new moon is that in the sign of Capricorn, it is building on potential of creative and spiritual expectations. Now that can look different depending on where you sit and what you think a ideal is for what we're constructing or aiming for. But the way I like to think of this particular new moon coming as it does at the end of 2024 is it is setting up the ability to make a contract about what we have learned from the trip of Pluto in Capricorn, which began in 2008. And wherever Pluto travels, the god of death and destruction and irrevocable transformation, Pluto is stripping away our preconceptions of how we thought things work. And in the sign of Capricorn, it has a lot to do with institutions, how financial systems work. We can see it at play in governmental structures all around the world. There are governments that are questioning how they do things or who is in charge. Specifically, countries where we see administrations shift or leaders getting ousted. The country that probably has the most statement that we will be seeing this from certainly is, well, the United States and possibly France, but certainly the United States. And so as Pluto travels through the sign of Aquarius, we will be reliving that time of the American Revolution when things were firmly put into place and separation began. So the United States may look very different in 8-10 years than it does today. And the evaluation of this new moon is setting up, well, what do you want to have happen? What can you imagine the potential can be? And I think the part that it's also speaking to with Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces is it's saying, how do we take care of one another? And is it okay to continually sacrifice and victimize so many people in a country? And that may not be what there's accountability for, but the moon in Capricorn, new moon, and Pluto in Capricorn is very much asking that we look at that. What is our responsibility in order to really invite in higher octaves of love, a sense of connectivity, and a sense of overall harmony within our world? So on a small scale, this can be whatever you're contemplating making happen in your personal life, especially anything that's creative or a commitment to a new spiritual routine or way of being. And when I use the word spiritual, I'm not just talking about possibly a religious practice, but I am saying that it is, how do you really feel you're connected and celebrating the wider world? And are you a part of it or disengaged from it? And this new moon is inviting you to be a part of it in whatever capacity feels like a fit to you. Now, usually when a new moon happens, the conventional wisdom is you wait, a day or so that the energy settles in before you take a big step forward with something. Keeping in mind Mars is retrograde, so this can be a more contemplative step forward than an actual I'm running out the door, but it depends what you're doing, of course. So there's a really nice window in the late afternoon to early evening, just when that new moon is happening, that's really saying, hey, if something's important, let's begin. Let's jot it down, acknowledge it, declare it, make a statement, revisit it. What is it that you're going forward to make happen over the next 28 years? 28 years. Well, it could be that, depending on where Saturn is transiting your horoscope. But the next 28 days or the next arc of time. Because when we do new moon activity, it's often good to think in short-term spurts, like what is it I'm accomplishing now? Doesn't mean you can't do a long-range project initiation, but it is really valuable for those prioritizing and getting those things done over the next couple of weeks. New Year's Eve, the 31st, has that moon in Capricorn. And good time for those wishes and promises to self and promises to other people. This can be a highly romantic evening, actually. Sometimes Moon in Capricorn, we don't necessarily think of romance, but actually Capricorn is a very tactile sign. It really loves romantic and sexual expression. So this can be a night of making those kind of commitments or senses of this is who I want to be with and this is how I want to be. If that isn't what's happening for you, again, it's a wonderful evening time to think about what it is you want to make happen, to really unfold in your creative potential, and what motivates you when you wake up in the morning, what makes you feel a sense of value. And if for some reason you're not feeling that, depending on where you're at, it may be a good time to make a commitment of starting to work with a coach or a therapist or someone to really help you feel more motivated, or as spiritual practice, martial art, regular walks, connections with nature, and really making a decision about what can motivate you more or give you that sense of why you're here. And another thing that I don't think can be understated is the value of volunteering. Volunteering for certain things can really help a person feel a sense of validation. And it can also, depending on where you're at, it can help you get out of your head and do things that maybe give you a sense of helping other people, or, it could be volunteering for the arts or nature, ecologic movements. All these things can be highly productive for stepping out of old routines. Wednesday, New Year's Day, January 1st, we enter into 2025. Ooh, yeah, we're in a different numerical vibration at that point in time. We are in a 9-year. So this can be different for you as an individual. We all have individual years, but 9 years are about finishing things up. They're about finishing things up as we open up onto what is going to happen 2026. And those of you who have listened to me regularly hear me say a lot that 2025 is the year when we're really going to see things start to move. And part of the movement will be the sloughing off of old ways. Things just going by the wayside, done with that, moving on to new things, and that's going to work out really well for some people and be very challenging for others. The most important piece about being aware of a 9-year is to not drive yourself crazy by holding on to things that really need to go, because they will go. And that's just the reality of the 9-year. This will be compounded for you if you're in a personal 9-year as well. But that's one of the setups of the 9. Hanukkah ends, according to my calendar, on January 2nd. The other thing to mention about New Year's Day, the 1st, is that the moon enters Aquarius at 5:50 a.m. Once it's in the sign of Aquarius, we are moving a lot more quickly than we may have been when that moon was in the sign of Capricorn. Now, this is not necessarily wonderful because, remember, Mars is retrograde, so we may need to stop and consider more than we necessarily are thinking. So my overall counsel for these days, Wednesday the 1st into Thursday the 2nd, is pay attention to where you are in space. There can be a lot of desire to move quickly, especially if I look at the morning, New Year's Day. I mean, it's almost like I can picture some people wanting to leap out of bed and not notice the kid's toy on the floor. It's this kind of pay attention to where you are in space. And overall, after the early morning, I think that we can have a lively day, a lot of exchange with different ideas. Revelations can come in, exciting things. We're in that waxy moon energy now, so pop, 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 pop. A lot coming in quickly, and that's true of the 2nd as well. The thing about this day on the 2nd is that pay attention to where you are in space is really important. I mean, a lot of people ski this time of year, or in the Northeast or areas with snow, or moving quickly. But, you can be on a slick road in a southern state or somewhere more south as well. You just want to pay attention to your environments. And it's not just potential of falling, it's a potential of getting into something that you didn't anticipate or see coming. And that can be exciting. It can actually open up a new idea or something that had not prior been considered. But again, you want to be alert to what's going on so you don't feel as though you've been pulled into a current other than you. Well, that's a good example as well. You're out and about, you could be swimming or sailing or windsailing or hiking, and the idea of being so distracted by the moment, and it's important to be present always, but if we're just in the moment and our feet aren't on the ground, we can get unseated. We can find ourselves in a space that we didn't want to be in. So the important piece on this day is that you are alert to your surroundings and you're really paying attention to what is coming into your realm, into your way. If we ignore someone, another example I'm thinking of is someone's trying to get your attention on the street, at a party, in a situation, and we can ignore it, but it can hit an acceleration that makes it impossible to ignore. So it's important to recognize whatever is rattling or coming in, and then you know how to deal with it. But to just ignore it and pretend it's not happening is not how you want to handle these couple of days. And it can be, it can be an email you get or a message you get. And it's important to observe it, disseminate it, respond to it in a way that makes sense, but not ignore it. It doesn't want to be ignored. So the moon goes void, of course, at 11:13 p.m. on the 2nd. And then the moon enters Pisces at 10:21 a.m. on Friday the 3rd. Now, this looks to me like it can be an absolutely lovely weekend. The important thing about this weekend is that you do well to have it be a weekend that is doing the things that you want to do. And that can actually be, I want to devote myself or let this weekend be all about my friend, my family, my whatever I'm doing of service. So it doesn't mean that it has to be about you specifically, but it does well when you're thinking in terms of, I want to do something that's going to allow me just to flow. So I'm not pushing myself too hard. I'm not trying to move a mountain. I'm not proposing something that is going to be a stretch. I want to do things Friday, Saturday into Sunday that allow me to show up, present my best self, and just dance with whatever's in front of me. So allowing yourself to do that can be a very sweet few days. It might be a poignant few days, depending on what it is you're choosing to do and how you're making that happen. But it is a very strong emotional weather to really allow a sense of, I am feeling in this space. And one of the things that people who don't know anything about astrology or question its validity will say is, how can there only be 12 kinds of people in the world? That makes absolutely no sense. And that's absolutely true. But that's just speaking in terms of a sun sign column. Once you realize that the moon changes signs every 2.5 days, that the moon is about the emotional nurturing part of the human being, the sun is self-expression. This is all shorthand terms I'm giving. Mercury is how we communicate. Venus is how we receive love and what attracts us. Mars is how we go after what we want and desire, how we express anger. And so the planets all represent different parts of the psyche. And so they're always moving. So that configures many, many different kinds of people. And when I say that this is a high-feeling weekend, not everybody is going to feel or have the sensitivity that, say, a moon in Pisces person has. Moon in Scorpio, Cancer moon. These are water sign moons. They feel what another person feels. And depending on the health of their emotional self, that can make them feel resentful or compassionate or connected. There's many different ways. For people who don't have a lot of water in their horoscope, they can find themselves maybe a little adrift with what's going on, not quite understanding the intensity or emotional needs of some people around them, or working to fix them or help them or facilitate whatever might be needed. This is also an absolutely delicious weekend to sink into realms of connectivity that have to do with the arts. The arts can be absolutely wonderful at allowing people to dive into worlds of emotional intelligence that maybe are not their daily way of being. It doesn't mean that they can't respond to it, but the ability to step back and look at it with perspective, objectivity, or experience it can actually enhance someone's emotional intelligence. Music does this a lot. People might want to listen to a concert or music that allows them that sense of feeling very connected or swimming with the audience in this beautiful space of sound. A movie, theater, galleries, art museums, all these are places that can really help a person feel that sense of being lifted emotionally and connected into the ways that we are all deeply connected, whether we're noticing that or not. And dance. Oh my goodness, what a great weekend to go out dancing if you like to do that. And even if it's not something you usually do, just to move around on the dance floor with some people can be a lot of fun and a sweet kind of connection. Could be a highly meditative weekend for other people. Time in an ashram, time to give service. It's overall, I think we can feel very fed this weekend if we tap in to ways of connecting beyond ourselves. The moon goes void of course at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, and it enters the sign of Aries at 2:01 p.m. Now, once we get into that Aries moon, very different energy than what we experienced the past couple of days. And the ideal is that you gave yourself that contemplative, nurturing time. So when that moon comes into Aries, if you feel motivated to start something, to be moving with something, to answer a call, to begin a new exercise regime, which a lot of people do at the beginning of the new year, or some obligation or commitment or something you were fired up to make happen, it's a great afternoon to start to begin that. The thing that I would say that's really important here, though, is to allow yourself some slack, because the moon is in Aries and Mars is retrograde still. So with that retrograde Mars, we may be experiencing some delays in how we actually want to get the thing off the ground and make it happen. And you don't want to be fighting yourself. You may have a sense of feeling a bit thwarted by certain things you want to get off the ground that aren't happening fast enough. Just recognize that that doesn't mean they aren't in motion. The valuable thing when we know a planet is retrograde, especially one that has an effect on many of us, people who are Aries or a lot of Scorpio or strongly aspected Mars, you are going to feel that retrograde more than other people do, because you're Mars oriented, you're action oriented, your life just sort of tracks along with some passion and direction for you. It may change a lot depending on other aspects of your horoscope, but you like to be in motion. When Mars is retrograde, it's asking that we slow down, that we track and consider how we put things out, that we measure much more carefully than is our norm. And this is not bad. It just may not feel comfortable for some of us. So if you're like raring to go and boom out the door and lots of things are happening, just keep in mind that you may find yourself with a delay or a frustration, not necessarily today, but as depending on the project and what you're trying to get happening as it unfolds. Doesn't mean you shouldn't start it, but it does mean that it is valuable for you to consider that when you are held back, frustrated, delayed, that there's a message there, something that warrants paying attention to. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.